That you've joined us today for Retro Metro. I want to give a special thanks to Rebecca Barrios, who is our community events manager and who manages this gallery, and Susan Bay, our intern from Belmont University, who actually curated this show. If you'll give them a round of applause, they do a fantastic job. And I am now going to turn it over to Councilman at Large and arts fan for his entire life, Ronnie Stein.
Thank you, Jen. Welcome, everyone. This is a wonderful part of our overall celebration of the 50th anniversary of the creation of metropolitan government. And Retro Metro is a terrific part of that celebration. The decision to merge our county and city government in 1963 was perhaps the most important decision this community ever made. But it also, in the early 60s, sort of reframed how we thought about Nashville. And the arts and the cultural institutions here at that time were very much a part of helping that reframe. I am today the third choice to be doing this welcome, but I am, for one of the few times, the best choice to be doing it. On Monday, I celebrate my 57th birthday of being a native Nashvillian. And in 1963, at age 7, because of my wonderful parents, I grew up playing on the grounds of Cheekwood. Harry Lowe, the director at the time, once held me on his lap at a board meeting that I remember. At the Nashville Symphony, I had vivid memories of my Saturday afternoons 3 or 4 times a year at youth concerts. And Willis Page used to play with me. He was the conductor at the time in our swimming pool. I was a little too young to go to Circle Players, but I do remember on, I think it was Thursday nights, that my parents went to Cross Keys Restaurant in Green Hills and then went on to the Circle Players Theater, which I guess is now below the Bluebird. I can't remember the exact location, but it was somewhere in that vicinity. So seeing all of this brings back wonderful memories for me. Our panel today, which I get to briefly say something nice about them, consists of 3 of my very favorite people. Anne Brown is truly one of Nashville's great visionaries and great survivors. And I say that with great affection. I will also tell you parenthetically that while she would have done great things on her own, when I was a student at Vanderbilt and had to do a paper on the cultural institutions of Nashville, my professor sent me to Fisk to meet a professor there, and then I introduced her to my mother, Peggy Stein, and then the rest is sort of wonderful conspiratorial goodness for this community, since the 2 of them hooked up in the early 80s. What Paul Polycarpou is doing with his magazine is a fabulous infusion of enthusiasm and energy into our arts community, and I particularly love what you're doing with your educational section in conjunction with the Ayers, which really spotlights some things going on in this community that are spectacular. And last but not least is Jen Cole, who you all know, who, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the finest decisions made for our arts community in many, many years. She brings a creativity and an intellect, and I will tell you, a much needed tenacity to our movement to make Nashville the kind of arts and cultural community we want to. Sometimes I know that different folks within our arts community may have a disagreement with her here and there, but everyone would agree we could have no stronger advocate for what we're all about than Jen Cole is. So I can't wait to hear what these folks have to say. They are collectively pretty interesting folks, and so I'm delighted to hear it. And welcome to you all, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you all so much. Before we get started, I feel like probably the best thing that we have to do is to thank our partners. And what part of forming this discussion today is to really talk about the spirit of collaboration and partnership that has existed amongst our large cultural institutions that we're highlighting really today, and kind of how that has evolved and changed over time. So this exhibit is a true partnership. We have ephemera here from RCA Studio B, the sort of precursor to the Country Music Hall of Fame, the Nashville Symphony, the Circle Players, the Nashville Library, Cheekwood, WNPT. We have, who am I missing? children's theater. We just have a great collection of organizations that were vibrant and thriving in the early 1960s, and really the strength of them and the evolution of those institutions has helped spawn many others. We're going to talk today about kind of how those institutions have changed over time and affected our overall cultural position in the city. And so I want to thank all the collaborators who dug into their archives and found some truly lovely things that kind of give us a snapshot of what it might have meant to be and living and participating in cultural life here in the early 1960s. Clearly this is not the full picture, and there clearly cultural life was happening all over this community, but we want to sort of start there and think about that. And so I guess I'll start with a question I'll pose to Ann and Paul. How have our large cultural institutions really changed, Cheekwood, Symphony, Circle Players, and responded to Nashville as Nashville has changed over the years?
I think they've gone from the few to the many. They've become part of our civic life. And when I first came here, they were just sort of there. And a few people could enjoy them. They were not totally professional groups at that time, which was fine, but it's very different now. I think we would be a very different world in Nashville and would not have been able to take advantage of our opportunities if it still were just a bunch of little cities. But because of Metro, these people who had been the few then had an opportunity to become the many. And one of those first things was the Metro Arts Commission. There were many things before that, but I think that that's the significant change. From the few to the many. The elite people owned it, and then they wanted, a mayor came in who wanted more, and that collusion was good.
That's good. So Paul, what do you think?
Well, and I think, I mean, the arts ultimately belong to all of us. So when you say they belong to the few, clearly the arts do not belong to the few. The arts belong to everybody. So I think what we're seeing, I think now, is the arts are getting out to everybody through through the civic groups, and that's where it belongs, because that's where the energy is, that's where the creativity is, that's where the people who are creating the arts, that's where the lovers of the art are. And so to take it out of the hands of the few, or not say take it out of the hands of the few, but to make it available and accessible to everybody, I think is where the direction it has gone in, and where it continues to go in. As you're going for the future, especially in public art, which is what I personally.
And it's not just about the few. They weren't trying to be that. They wanted more, so it's not putting them down. It's just saying it was limited. They were the only ones who could do something, and those funds were limited.
Right.
Even though they had big money, they were still limited. So you can't really help the arts become part of the civic life unless it becomes something more important than just individuals who are able to afford tickets.
Right.
And it's much more fun when the rest of us can enjoy it and be part of it.
Absolutely.
Well, one of the things I noticed when you sort of look at the photos, particularly about the institutions, it's one, I think it's worth noting that it's pretty rare to have the level of cultural institutions that have the historic, they have consistently had seasons, have consistently been open, have sort of consistently been part of the fabric of the community. And we have an incredible diversity in this group that we're featuring today. And they've actually consistently grown over time. I think it's really great for me to see the sort of the Studio B pictures and then to sort of watch how the Hall of Fame has evolved as sort of probably actually the leading sort of tourist attraction and cultural institution in the city over time, and sort of to really see how many of these things move from sort of cottage, kind of homegrown participation in the arts to really where we really have an arts economy now, and that's a major component of what you think about when you think about Nashville. I would gather in 1963 when you thought about Nashville, you really didn't think about it kind of as a world-class cultural city. Maybe you did, I don't know, I didn't live here in 1963. I didn't live anywhere in 1963.
Yeah, but you do now.
I do now.
You do now, because it really is a world-class cultural center.
Right. I mean, I want to say, I mean, I moved here 12 years ago, and I just in that time, just in the last slice of those 50 years, I think it's changed incredibly. I moved from a much larger urban area to here, and it took me a while to sort of find the arts and culture enclaves that I had in my life in Washington, D.C., and I just sort of feel like it's incredibly vibrant. So it's changed dramatically, even in a decade.
But Jen, when I moved here in 1980, I came to play music. When I came around here, I went looking for culture. Yeah. I went looking for art. And I said, where is it? It's got to be somewhere. And I couldn't find it anywhere. Now it's everywhere. Mm-hmm. It's pervasive. And it's not just everywhere, it's good.
Yeah.
You have people like Chris Monani, who's sitting right there, the gentleman in the blue shirt, the Dance Theatre of Tennessee. I mean, remarkable theatre group. Go see them. It's as good as anything you'll see in New York, in Chicago, in Dallas. They're fabulous. I went the other day. So what I'm saying is it's not just everywhere, it's good everywhere,
right.
which is...
And I think we have to acknowledge that sort of that rides on the backs of organizations that sort of began to build audience,
Absolutely.
and like that we're featuring here today, that began to build audience and sort of a sense that that is one of the things we participate in. One of the things I'm always fascinated by is each year we do a creative vitality index and study kind of cultural participation, and Nashville consistently ranks the top 4 cities in the country for cultural participation. And the thing that really pushes us over the edge, they use all these IRS statistical numbers, but the thing that always pushes our city over the edge is the participation rate of our citizens in cultural life. We buy more tickets to performances at cultural institutions and paid concerts than people do per capita in New York and Los Angeles, which is pretty remarkable. We are a city that participates in this kind of stuff, which I think starts from a tradition of 50 years ago and continues to grow.
It is remarkable, I think, because there's so much of it that sometimes you get a little blasé about, well, we'll just go next week, because there's so many
Then
concerts.
you miss it. Then you miss it.
Yeah, but it's fabulous that we are a community that participates.
Yeah,
you know,
at a very deep level. I mean, and I think it's you know, per capita, but that cuts across all income areas, that there really is that level and that sense that we participate and it belongs to us. And I think that really is something kind of coded in the DNA of what it means to be a Nashvilleian. So I have a sort of follow-up question, which is, since the music industry sort of has been our predominant kind of cultural influence here, and it really peaked between the 50s and the 80s, how do you feel that that affected other cultural institutions, the for-profit music industry? What was its effect, good or bad, on our cultural institutions?
I think for a while it didn't. I think for a while people in Nashville thought it was just a bunch of hicks, you know. And I would say that was true up to even into the late 80s. They still treated it that way. I know that one of my challenges and one of my positions was to try to get Belle Meade with Music Row downtown. You know how we did it? Valet parking. And a lot of people talking to each of them on both sides and trying to get the leaders together to have dinner. You know, that was at the Merchant's Restaurant when it first became something other than a brothel. And there were a lot of brothels down there at the time. But I mean, it takes a long time for those things to happen, and it also takes a concerted effort on the part of a lot of people. I go back again to Metro. If it weren't for the Metro way of doing business, I do not think this could have happened in this way, because it also gave us an avenue to try to bring the music industry into something more than what everybody wanted it to be. And so we can't do country music, we've got to be more. And I think it was kind of a challenge in that way, because everybody was kind of frustrated that the music people were doing so well. Why should they, when the symphony should be doing so well? And now they do it well together.
Right.
You know?
Well, you know, and the music, I mean, I'm from the music industry originally, so, you know, I mean, I love it, but, you know, there was in the 80s a changing of the guard. You know, some of the old performers kind of, you know, stopped touring and the new sort of entertainers come in. But, you know, with all of that, you know, within the music industry, every one of those people in there is sort of, you know, friends or married to another creative person who's in the arts. And so that whole thing kind of just kind of permeates up too. You know, there's, you know, the music industry brings a lot of creativity with it, you know. And then there was some sort of, you know, criticism of it at one time that it was just, you know, like that this was just a music city. But I know, living in London, when I lived in London, I wanted to come to Nashville because of country music. That's why I wanted to come here. So for whatever reason it got people here, and then they were exposed to the other great creative things that were going on in this town. So I'm always kind of a champion for the music industry. But bringing the two together, I mean... You know,
I think they showed the way, too, to the arts. I mean, very creative, collaborative community. They walk next door to each other's places, studios, share things. And I think that's begun to happen over the last 15 years or so with arts groups. They're much more, they're much easier with each other. They're better on a par with each other because they all have a certain level of quality and excellence, and so they're comfortable with each other. So it's not apples and oranges anymore. It's everybody is part of this creative thing that really is indigenous to Nashville. I mean, we grew a popular culture, and music is basically what that was. And that popular culture now has influenced the more classical culture. And name a city where that's happened.
Right.
I mean, this is what makes us really distinctive. So it's not music versus something. It's because of that we had that.
Exactly.
And we grew it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think the other thing I would comment on is that I think anytime you have a professional sector, so a professional for-profit music sector, it draws talent, ancillary. It's kind of like a magnet for other talent, but it also sort of raises the professionalization bar of the other cultural institutions. So you're able to get more equity actors, you're able to get more other professional, technical and artistic staff to kind of come in from other places. And I mean, I think just in the last few years, the kind of explosion of this is a rock city and a soul city and a gospel city, and the crossovers in our major cultural institutions. You know, you've got Ben Folds doing brand new stuff with the ballet and the symphony. You've got the Civil War is doing the ballet ball, which would have never happened 50 years ago. Never. You've got the Children's Theater who's capitalizing on Nicole Kidman and sort of bringing in kind of national level actors who have relocated here. And so I feel like one of the things that happens when you have a really strong for-profit creative side is that it's able to fertilize and kind of cross-fertilize with a nonprofit cultural sector, which I do think is kind of some special sauce that Nashville has. You don't see that except in very other large cultural centers like New York and Los Angeles, where you have that kind of professional base. And so I do think that does add a texture and a tone to our cultural life here that is really quite unique. The reason Edgar Meyer plays all the time, at the symphony or whatever, is there really is this sort of wonderful cross-fertilization that sort of happens.
But let me add one thing to it. That same thing is happening with visual art. I'm sure you must have noticed. I mean, the Frist is fabulous. Absolutely a stunning addition to this community. But think about it, that in the last 15, 20 years, and maybe even in the last 10 or 5, more and more galleries and more creative artists coming to. There are probably 150 artists working in their studios right now while we're sitting here.
All over town. Yeah.
All over town.
Yeah.
Together we've seen a lot of them.
And Cheekwood.
Yeah.
And Cheekwood.
I mean, that's got Bruce Monroe coming.
Well, that's
in a couple
true.
Of months.
I mean, Cheekwood as well. Yeah.
Light artist.
And even Cheekwood is changing toward that thing of becoming more civic-minded, if you will, becoming more available to the public, and it's taken them a long time to figure out how to do that. But boy, they're doing it well.
Well, with Chihuly, I mean, there's
it's been hard to do.
300,000 people showing up. It's fantastic.
So we got a lot going on.
So one of the things, I mean, so if we peel back to sort of 1962, 1963, you have a handful of sort of, at that point, even fledgling cultural institutions that are now kind of, I think Phil Bredesen described some of them as cultural furniture. But I think, you flash forward to now, and we really have a great explosion of small and grassroots organizations that are really kind of mirroring the shape of Nashville and really trying to reach out and provide arts and arts access to all sort of parts of the community. And so I wanted to sort of see if you'd talk about how you feel like the arts community is really adapting to our really pretty rapid demographic change. We're going to be a white minority community in 25 years. So cultural minorities will be the majority in 25 years. Where population is trending younger and younger. So we're going to be a really different Nashville than the Nashville in that giant Cheekwood book back there. And so I sort of would love for you to talk a little bit about how you see our institutions, large and small, responding to that demographic change.
I think we're already responding.
Yeah.
I think we have to and must and want to, because think of how rich that's going to be. I mean, we've got so long to go with that, so far to go with that, but I mean, it's already beginning. I mean, everything is going in that direction, and we've got this century is just unbelievably so different from anything anybody before 2000 experienced. Already it's totally different in the last 12 years. Could we not agree on that? I mean, it is so vastly different. And we have to think that's a positive, really good thing. And I think in the arts, we've got such traction now that we're almost able to follow the new trend, to follow the new dynamic. And I think we're all positioned comfortably enough that we can do that we'll be flexible, open, and move forward with it.
I think it sort of takes on a more of an international flavor. Yeah. I mean, what's going to happen in Nashville is going to be exactly what happened in London, what happened in Berlin, what's happened in Munich, in major sort of cities around the world. I mean, if you were to experience the art in Berlin right now, you'd be shocked at what passes for art. You know, you would not recognize it as art. I know that because we're doing a story on Berlin, and they keep sending me images. I say, what is this? Well, 5 years from now, I'm going to understand what that is, because we are going to start experimenting, growing into different forms of art.
Yeah.
So it's not just canvas art, it's not just plein air or, you know, flowers in a vase or whatever it is. It's going to be much, much more experimental. It's going to be much more cutting edge. Some of it's going to be, we're going to look at it and go, ah, what on earth happened? But from that, great art will come. I mean, I'm convinced. And that's what will make Nashville, I think, an international art center, which it's growing into. I mean, it's going to take, you know, a few years, but it's certainly going that way, definitely.
I mean, I see our cultural institutions responding extremely well, I think, to changing demographics. I see folks taking, you know, rather than sort of large productions that require a lot of back end, being more flexible with their productions, being able to take them and move them, being able to respond to different audience dynamics and demographics, using digital learning in a new different way. I mean, the Hall of Fame, I think, and the Frist and others are doing some really great things around digital learning that really kind of take down walls for participation, which I think are incredibly important. I was at a conference at Vanderbilt last week. Vanderbilt is actually one of the lead partners in the largest study ever of graduates in the arts after they leave college. Actually, one of the largest studies of graduates ever around professional careers. They've studied 70,000 arts graduates, and they're tracking their careers. And they're finding that the average arts graduate changes jobs 11 times and is only about 50% likely to actually work in their field. And so I think what that means for us is that we have an audience demographic that is consuming art in a completely different way than the institutions that you see captured here, where it's a sort of target audience that will come and buy a ticket and sit in a seat in a A-frame house in a typical, you know, Greek theater pattern. I think that day is gone. I think the ship is sailing. It's certainly leaving. It's certainly leaving the harbor. And so, if that's sort of your arts graduate, goodness knows your non-arts graduate might even be more mobile than that. And so, I think that in terms of who's producing art and who's consuming art, that it's just going to be. I can't even begin to think of kind of some of the things we'll need to do, but certainly being more nimble. And I do think that our institutions are sort of driving that, which leads me to my last question, and then we'll take questions from the audience, or you can ask us questions, or you can just eat.
I think being nimble is exactly right, Lev. I think if you get stuck thinking like this, things bog down. I think being nimble, reacting instantly, I think that's what our institutions have to do, because it's changing by the half hour. You know, what's popular right now 5 minutes ago is well, that's 5 minutes ago. We're on to something else right now.
That's true.
You know? So so being nimble, being intelligent, but being nimble, I think is what will keep the whole thing sustained and keep it going in a good direction.
Right, because I'm pretty sure 18 months ago, you could not have convinced me that a Korean glam rock video would have had more YouTube downloads than any video ever, and that both my children can now do that dance verbatim.
But how cool is that, though?
It is.
It's so cool.
You know, so sort of I think what becomes iconic and what takes off and what sort of instigates participation is a completely different it's a completely different spark than it used to be. Which begs the question, if the poor sap who runs Metro Arts in 50 years, because it won't be me, has to do an exhibit like this and gets to do an exhibit like this, what will this exhibit look like in 2063? What will be here?
You got to have a bigger place.
Yes, much bigger place and more comfortable seats.
More comfortable seats.
And you're going to see it all by video.
All by video.
I think it will be totally interactive. I think
You can be at home and be here.
Okay.
So.
I think what people are craving is an interactive experience with the art. They want to be a part of it. They want to feel engaged. I think the notion of standing and looking at a painting and then moving on to the next one, then moving on to the next one, that's going to be totally gone. Because already now you've got with your phone, you get information on it, and all that's going to go to the nth degree. So 50 years from now, it has to be totally interactive. That's the way art has to go, I think.
I agree.
You know, that we are a part of the creation, we're a part of experiencing, like Camille Atterbuck is doing with her art. You do this, and it changes the painting. It changes what she created.
That's right.
You know, I don't know if you guys saw that at the Frist. It's fabulous. You do this, the monitors pick you up, and it changes the painting that's already up there. You know, so now you have become the artist. You know. So, and I think that's the way that the interactive part of it. Everyone wants to feel that they're involved in that. You know, YouTube, do a little video, get it up, people respond. 50 billion people look at a Korean dancing. It's fantastic. You know? So I think that's the way 50 years from now, maybe even less than 50 years.
So there might not actually
maybe 20
be
years,
an exhibit. It might just be you kind of create your own
absolutely.
Metro 2063 exhibit.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just finished
Great
reading.
idea.
I just finished reading Al Gore's book on the future.
Yep.
And I don't think he even knows. So how can we know? But I mean, you know, I mean, it's just a bunch out there, and it is so fast. It's exponential growth. It is so fast. I mean, how do we know it's just going to be interactive? We could be standing on our heads, and that would be the way by then. I mean, it is really quick. It's like the quick and the dead right now. I mean, you're either on it or you're lost. It's kind of like that, really.
Sure. And an artist doesn't have to wait, you know, for his next exhibit to get feedback. You know, I mean, John Reed's over there, incredible artist. He can paint something, put it up right now, and we can respond whether we like it or we don't like it. You know, he can tell within half an hour whether people are going to enjoy seeing that painting or not. So he doesn't have to create and keep it in a room waiting for his next show. It's instant.
That's right.
We can give him feedback, and I think that's what's going to be happening in the future. Instant feedback, instant creation. I like it. I think it's exciting.
I do.
We're all for it.
I think the whole idea of permanence is a really critical question, and you know, and just the idea of archival work and kind of what that feels and what it means to a city to kind of have consistency and not. So, okay, before I completely get entirely too philosophical on a Friday afternoon, I thought I might ask some. Do you have questions, thoughts, comments, observations?
Can I just make one comment about public art?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I really love public art. I grew up in London. I remember I used to get the bus and go to work and the art that was on the street is what has stayed with me all my life. I would love to see more
of it.
Public art. It's free. Children can respond to it. You see it every day. It becomes a part of your life. It becomes a part of your experience. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to buy a ticket. You walk right past it. It's what you guys are doing with the bike racks. I love it. It's what creates a city. It's what makes this a fun place to live. And so art within a wall, I get it. But public art out there, I think, is a great part of Nashville's future.
Thank
so
you.
I'd like to see
We
tons
agree.
of it.
It's kind of setting our style, though, gradually. I mean, we don't even know what that is yet, but it is setting it up for us. We're being set up for whatever that is. And we don't even know what it is. You all don't even know what it is yet till you see it.
Well, actually, that begs a good question. We're at this, you said you're getting stuff from Germany that's so conceptual. You're kind of, what is that?
Right.
You know, and I do think as a public art collection and a relatively new one, the dialogue that happens between our community and public art is, you know, figurative bronzes are really safe because we understand them and we know them.
Yeah, but
and
they
we
were
know
so
what they
boring.
look like. Well, I'm not going to say that, but they're a fixed point, right? So if we have to put the compass, we understand what that means. Right. That's recognizable in our canon, whatever it is. And so I do think as a city and as an evolving urban center, thinking about the kind of art and that sometimes we have to push our boundaries so that it's not all recognizable and completely on the compass. I do think that that's going to be something that we need to think about doing. And I think that's going to be something that's hard for us.
But you know what?
Public art is a dialogue.
Exciting.
But you have maneuvered it into involving a lot of people. And so that to me is what's different from the way a lot of public art has developed over the centuries. I mean, the kings would do it or the wealthy people would commission it. And now cities commission it, and of course cities have done this before. But here, I mean, I always get wind of this stuff of people talking about it, and having people review it, think about it. I mean, it's just going to be like in the music stuff. It's going to be a different thing. This is totally coming from the ground up. Nashville is a city that's doing from the ground up. And that is such a different kind of thing, and I think we are going to evolve in a very different way because of that.
And I do think it takes time. I mean, Paul's right. If you look at Philadelphia, which is one of the older public art programs in the country, it took them 60 years to build that collection. And you can't walk through Philadelphia without the visual experience you have in London or other cities that have had a long time. And so, in 63 years, I think that we will have a visual texture with our public art collection. I can't tell you what it'll look like. I hope it'll be kind of exciting.
But you know what? We got Cheekwood and the Frist, and they've got these collections. They don't have collections. Cheekwood has a collection, but they primarily work on this thing of changing, of bringing in new things, which gives them that flexibility. So we get to see more things. I mean, I pity the poor cities that have collections they have to deal with, you know. I mean, we can go there and enjoy them, but Cheekwood and the Frisk between them are going to bring it all.
Yep.
We're going to get it all, really. I mean, we don't have to have the collection to do that.
That's right.
I think that's an interesting part of what's going to happen here.
That's great. So thoughts?
And performance art, too.
Performance art, oh.
Yeah.
Performance art.
Yeah.
Paul's always got one more.
Okay.
Okay.
You know, there's so much going on with the arts, but you know, I mean, the performance art. I mean, things that are just that exist right now, you know, and then they're gone, and we enjoy them because it's a performance, and then it's over. You know, I mean, I think that when you say what were the next 50 years, I definitely see Nashville growing more, embracing the performance arts a lot more. Not just on the stage, but also out on the streets, or you know, also out to make sort of political message or to say, you know, community messages, but certainly using theatre, dance, singing to sort of be more engage the community more in the arts, I think. So public art, performance art, definitely.
You sure there's not one more?
Well, there might be another one, I don't know.
Okay, because I'm going to let them ask a question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Or pose a thought or an observation. Anyone? John?
First, let me say thank you to the three of you. I can probably say thanks for a lot of visual artists in Nashville and all that you've done to influence the visual arts in this city. And then also ask what would be one of the projects that the Arts Commission is really excited about right now, and how is it going to influence the city?
Wow, that's... if you know me, you know I'm excited about just about everything, which is... I am really, really, really excited about the opportunity around the Korean Veterans Boulevard roundabout. That will be the largest public commission that we've done so far. We have 4 internationally known public artists that are shortlisted for that right now, and I cannot wait to see what their proposals are. I think that will be one of those watershed moments that really kind of changes the conversation about public art. And it may be really great. I may have my phone on a whole lot. You know, for us, it will be great because any conversation is a great conversation about art. And so I do think I'm real excited about that project because it does. You won't be able to miss it, whatever it is. And I think that neighborhood and sort of the trajectory of the neighborhood of the Lafayette area and this corridor is going to be the one where we won't recognize it in a decade. And the idea that art could be an anchor and a real kind of core component of the neighborhood redevelopment is incredibly exciting to me.
Very exciting. It's very, very exciting. Good.
Yeah.
I had a question about collaboration. I guess you touched on it earlier, the music industry working with organizations. At Nashville Public Television, we work with Cheekwood and the Frisk Center and the Symphony to put together a documentary. So I was curious, one, what you think of the state of collaboration in the city, and then two, do you have a dream collaboration? Or throw out there maybe.
A dream collaboration.
All the cultural institutions do the Harlem Shake together.
Oh!
All across the
All across Nashville. It won't be quite that bad. I actually think that the state of collaboration is incredible and one of the unique things about this city. Having worked in other nonprofit sectors and other cities, and when I talk at the national level with my peers in other big cities, they're constantly they say, now this institution worked with that institution to do what? I mean, how are they not fighting for resources? And I do think that it is one of the unique things about this community. It's small enough that people sort of need to work with one another and embrace that. And I feel like it goes back to this idea about kind of the greater good and the art that's being produced. Is I think at some level the cultural institutions have embraced that if we can cross-fertilize this talent, there is an economy of scale and quality that goes up with it. So I think it's actually incredibly good, and I'm excited about what that looks like in 10 or 15 years as the diversity of our institutions and our artists changes incredibly, and kind of what that next sort of phase of collaboration is. Dream collaboration, Harlem Shake aside, I need to think about that one. Joe, that's a good question.
Well, do you have one?
Yeah.
Joe, what's your dream collaboration? Well, you're an artist, you're a writer, a singer. You'll have one.
I can tell you that I'm involved with a bunch of people who are great collaborators. Susan is one of them. Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm thinking Susan. She's with Tenny Contemporary. And we collaborate down there like for how many years now? 4 or 5 years. Meeting every week, without fail. and addressing our issues in common, encouraging others. The Tennessee Art League is moving in on our block, even as we speak. They're moving Monday to the place between our galleries in one block. We've called this thing Fifth Avenue of the Arts forever, but it really is a collaborative thing that's happened over time, and it has made a significant difference to a lot of people and has attracted people. But we have a lot more collaborating to do, because we started out doing it with the symphony and the Ryman and everybody, and we had to kind of cut it back because we had to pay attention to the visual arts first, get our act together, and now we're starting to reach out again. So I think you're going to see significant collaboration in that whole corridor downtown in the next 2 or 3 years.
Being done, Joe, without people saying, well, this is mine and I don't want to share this with you and we need these resources, you know. And I'm part of these, you know, these meetings, and the whole thing is collaborative. Like, what can I do to help Tinny? What can Tinny do to help Ann? What can we do collectively as a street to promote the arts? What can we do collectively as a city to get, you know, the ballet sort of hooked up with songwriters and whatever? And all that is being done without thinking, well, but if I help Ann, that takes money out of my pocket. Or if I help Susan, that doesn't help me. Because ultimately, it helps everyone. Because as as the bar goes up, everybody, through that collaboration, profits from it. Not just monetarily, but profits, you know, spiritually and as a city from it. So the collaboration thing is enormous. What's going on in the arts right now.
It's for real.
Yeah. And I think it's unique to Nashville. I haven't experienced it in other cities.
I really haven't.
Have you?
Not at the level, and not when it's sort of the greater good sort of is in space. I mean, I guess, you know, to broader answer the question, Joe, I think one of the things I would love to see us do more as a city, and it's not just about one institution or another, is one of the biggest gaps we have right now in sort of in moving our creative class forward for-profit ventures and cultural institutions is sort of this lack of capitalization for startup ideas. And one of the things I'd love for us to have is a creative innovation fund that really funds the best and the brightest of those innovative collaborations, whether they're between for-profit creative businesses or nonprofits or both. Creative Denver, Creative Austin, there are some models where San Jose has a really fantastic creative entrepreneur center where it's in the cultural arts, where sort of they're bringing kind of the best of Silicon Valley's entrepreneurship together with cultural arts, and they're basically putting seed money and startup capital for kind of creative solutions to things that are bringing artists together with entrepreneurs. And to me, the next phase of collaboration isn't just like let's you and I work together on a new play, or let's you and I work together on a new composition. It's let's you and I work together on a new business model that seeds a new neighborhood, that creates a new kind of cultural center for the city. Because I think that's the other piece that's evolving, is sort of, I think we've thought of the arts with a capital A, and it's mostly been involved with nonprofit arts, and I think that's important and critical. But I think more and more we need to kind of, the line has to begin to blur a little bit between our sort of creative endeavors, so that we can kind of push the tide up for everybody. Sure. Does that make sense? Okay.
And that's what they've done in the music industry. Exactly that.
Yeah. So that would be one of my dreams.
I was just going to say that it seems to be an extension out of the music industry where they co-write.
Right.
You know, I mean, everybody co-writes in the music industry.
Same thing.
It just helps everybody, you know, all the artists together.
That's
right.
And we see that.
It's a national model.
Yeah.
That's a model.
In Hollywood, you would be commissioned to write the theme, and you'd be told what to do with it and how it should sound. So.
But I love that idea, though, of getting a fund to help small startups, people like the Skillery that over in East Nashville do wonderful things, need help. To, that
well, and I think that goes to for-profit and nonprofit, because I think more than anything, I mean, you've got a lot of opportunities for organizations that have started and are capitalized and can, in terms of growth capital. We have a lot of growth capital and angel investors for larger businesses, and I work sometimes with the fashion industry here, sometimes with other makers, food makers or distilleries, people who are in what I would consider creative businesses. And there's an incredible amount of collaboration with the artistic community, the cultural institutions and individual artists. And then there's this moment where you get to the place where you want to grow and you're not quite there. How do you do it? And I think the creative idea process is here. I think it's about capitalizing it in the city in a real way that makes good sense. So. Thoughts, comments? Peanut gallery? No. Well, go ahead.
One more comment on the public art.
Yep.
When you guys were talking about that, I love the fact that we can tell people as landmarks where to turn, because the streets all the time. So we don't have to go by street names. We can just go by the art.
Yeah, in Chicago, it's like turn at this Calder versus that Calder. We don't have quite, hopefully, maybe we'll get 2 Calders, I don't know. Probably not, but exactly. So we love this. This gallery is an extension of the Arts Commission's mission to sort of make art accessible to everyone, and we love doing programming like this. And so I want to thank each of you for coming and spending the time. For those of you who contributed to the exhibit, for spending your time to do that. I want to say, if you haven't already downloaded the sound compilation, this exhibit is interactive. You can actually, our friends at the Symphony and at the Hall of Fame created some sound compilations for us that you could download via your phone, and we hope that you'll sort of experience that if you want to. And I want to invite everybody to come back to the public square on April 6th. Metro is actually wrapping up its year-long celebration of Metro at 50, and there'll be a day, an entire 24 hours, I understand, of celebrating Metro at 50 activities on the courthouse. So please come back for that. Enjoy some snacks, enjoy each other, and thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.